Hey, y'all. Welcome to our very first Spiders Lead podcast. I am your host, Lauren Wickland, and I oversee our leadership development initiatives for our coaches, staff, and student athletes here in Spider Athletics. This podcast we are really excited about. It's going to be coming out monthly, and we hope that it's just a really great way for our student athletes, fan, community, and just anyone that's really interested and passionate about this world of sports and leadership to get connected and inspired. And we hope to bring some of the very best in this industry to you. And I think we're starting off strong today with our first guest. So I'm very fired up to welcome our esteemed alum, Kevin Eastman. Kevin received his bachelor's and master's degree from the university. He's worked in the world of basketball for over 40 years, including 13 years in the NBA with the Clippers and Celtics, 4 years as a college director of athletics, and 22 years as a college coach. So somebody that has seen every single side of the world of sports in his career. He's won an NBA championship, coached in 2 NBA All-Star games, and gotten to work with the best of the best people such as the late Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Anthony Davis, Kevin Love, John Wall, the list goes on and on. And now he has turned his career into a speaking and motivation company and author with the book out, Why the Best Are the Best, 25 Powerful Words That Impact, Inspire, and Define Champions, which is just a fantastic read. Y'all should definitely go out and get it. And then most importantly, I think he's just a husband, a father, and just a fantastic human being that I am so grateful to have gotten to know, and we're so grateful to have him as an alum. So Kevin, thank you so much for being on with us today. I just obviously read a little bit of your bio, and I know a lot of the people listening will know kind of what your biographies say. They've Googled you, they've heard you, maybe even read your book. But I wanted to start off with kind of telling people, what are some things that people might not know about you that's kind of made you into this incredibly successful person to the outside world, right? That so we can get to know you a little bit better and hear about how you got to where you are.
Yikes. I think this is maybe my 70th Zoom, either a Zoom presentation or a talk to the corporate world or the sports world, and I've never gotten that question. I've often been asked, tell us a little bit about your journey, but that's kind of the things that people could read about.
Yep.
So things that people may not know. I guess this might be more directed to some of the younger leadership listeners and certainly to the student athletes, but hey, don't be fooled by those who become really successful. And if people consider me to be successful, then go ahead and put me in that group. But all of us, me included, probably in my background, especially when I was younger, I went through my days with some doubt. I went through my days with some comparisons to others, and that's totally natural. You're going to doubt yourself a little bit. Even the best of the best, the Doc Rivers, the Pete Carrolls of the world, the Brad Stevens of the world, right? The Kenny Atkinsons, one of Richmond's alums who was an NBA head coach. I know for sure each of them doubted themselves at times. So those would be two things that maybe people don't even know that would be part of who I am. And in terms of the comparison, I think there's 2 types of comparison. One's not good for us. Okay, well, they did that, so how come I'm not that good? That can get you into a little bit of trouble. Don't concern yourself so much with what they did, but in the comparative side, compare yourself to what actually did they do to get to where they got, and can I put some of those things into what I do? Now, from a deeply personal standpoint, probably what people don't know is, our family, like the colleges that they went to was incredible, and some of them went to play sports just like I did. But you're talking about one sister went to Princeton, one went to Wellesley. Both of those were on academic rides. Another one went to Indiana and was a swimmer on their swim team. Some of my brothers, UCLA, Rutgers, Randolph-Macon up the road. Actually, the more I think about it, the sisters outperformed the brothers in terms of the schools that they went to.
I like it.
Other than the University of Richmond.
Of course.
And then the last thing I'd probably throw at you is, you mentioned the NBA championship and all that, and people think, well, gosh, how lucky, and he got that, and overnight sensation and all that. It was 24 years in the coaching world before I actually got to maybe the highest level and the pinnacle, which is winning a championship. So, so much of us are alike. We just don't think we are.
Oh, I love that. I think, especially in just the way of the world right now, that comparison and that doubt creeps in so much because there's just so much uncertainty. So I think that's so helpful to everyone kind of listening to y'all today. And then just the work it takes behind the scenes. Like there's a phrase about that we talk about a lot in our leadership initiative about winning in the dark, right? And so like, what are you doing when no one's looking? And that Boston Celtics story was exactly that, right? Like people think that big play at the end of the game, oh, he just got lucky. No, like luck happens because you're working repeatedly behind the scenes for all those years, like you mentioned, to get there. And so I just think that's so helpful to our listeners today. And that really takes me to the next question I have for you, which is, we know, and we're watching it every day, sports take the lead on all kinds of initiatives, from social justice to the pandemic to things in their community. They're just really influencing our world. And so how have you personally kind of seen sports influence the world of leadership throughout your journey?
Well, first, before I get into that, I love that term, winning in the dark. You probably saw me. One of the other things that you don't know about me is I take notes all the time. So as you were saying that, I was writing it down here on my little notepad that I had with me. So in terms of influence and things like that, I would say what sports has gotten us to understand is the necessity and the power of listening, right? And many coaches in positions of leadership in particular, they're having to listen to actually those they lead right now, right? And when I talk to the corporate world, I often talk to leaders about, how do you listen? Do you listen to respond, or do you listen to understand? And now more than ever, as leaders, we have to listen to understand, right? And because if we are speaking to someone that has some knowledge and background in the area that we're trying to maybe improve upon, they have the expertise in that area. Just sit, listen, think about what you heard, take notes, etc. And then I said, I guess I carry this with me, as a matter of fact. It's over here on my desk, so I'm just going to use it. It's a little pad that I keep with me that is a constant reminder for me. And I call this bringing your A game. I think that sports has told us and taught us during this time of challenge, sensitivity, that we need to bring our A game, but not the A game that everyone who follows sports thinks about, meaning your best effort. I'm not talking about that. The A game I'm talking about is the leadership A game. And the leadership A game goes like this. There are 5 A's that are incorporated in this. And we see this every day with the best leaders in sports. The first A is to assess. Where are we? In particular, as an athlete, how good are my skills? Where do I need to improve upon? As a leader, am I listening to my people? Assess where you are. The second A is to acknowledge that you are actually there, right? The biggest con job we can do in this world is to con ourselves, right? There's con all around us today, but the one person we cannot con is ourselves. So we have to assess where we are. We have to acknowledge where we are. And then that starts the process of moving forward. We have to adjust. If we've assessed and we've acknowledged and we see there are some areas to improve upon, sports has taught us already, like coaches, you have to listen. So you have to adjust the standard, what we read about in all the leadership books. Leader leads and followers follow. No, right now the followers are leading. Okay, the players are leading. And then the fourth A is kind of what came about in the NBA bubble. And that's to take action, to have a plan, right? And then take action on the plan. And as you've seen, the players have been relentless. And that's important whenever you're putting an action plan together. Action to me is defined by a daily commitment to execute what you said was what we needed to execute to get the outcome that we felt we all needed. And then the last A is advance. Now we've done all of our assessing, we've acknowledged, we've adjusted, we've gotten our plan of attack together, and now we have a chance to advance. And but that doesn't stop. Like with the best of the best, it doesn't stop there. Michael Jordan taught me something. We were together in Santa Barbara, California, and he said something I'll never forget. He was talking about when you play in the NBA and you're one of the better players, you have to understand you're going to be successful. That's why you're one of the best. But he said, success never stops. Success doesn't stop once you get there. And that's what we're seeing today that's being brought out in sports. We have to continue to work on the things that need to be worked on.
Oh my gosh, so many good takeaways. I loved that acknowledge thing. I got my notes too. I love the acknowledge piece, because I think, we are by ourselves a lot more right now, right? And so people are really having to come to terms with, am I assessing? Am I working hard? Like, who really am I? And I think that is such an important point of it, that acknowledge and assess piece in today's world is crucial, because you're with yourself a lot more than you usually are, right? And so there's a lot you can do behind the scenes to get better and to bring that A game. And so I really love that. And then obviously the advice from Michael is just so meaningful, because there's no stopping, right? Like, I'm sure after the great leaders, after a championship, they say, okay, what's next? Like, what are we going after next? And so I think that is just so helpful for people to know that everyone's always trying to get better. So there's no stopping point. It never fails. I love that. I took a lot of good notes too. So I will talk about something that I admire about Kevin is role modeling. He doesn't just say things, he does them every day. And so he's got his pen and paper. I've got my pen and paper. We're writing notes and we're sharing ideas, and that's how you become better as a leader. So I thank you so much, Kevin. I want to backtrack your life a little bit, because like you said in your intro, everybody knows the Kevin of today, and as you go speaking and talk about all the different things you've accomplished. But as you said, it came from all this hard work and the journey that took you to get you there. So I want you to kind of, if you can, take us back to that first time you felt like you were a leader. What was that? What lessons did you learn from that experience? And then I guess kind of the two questions on that is, do you still use any of those things today, or are there things that you're like, I would never do again from kind of that first leadership standpoint?
Yeah, well, in my current spot in life, I actually, my income is derived from actually using my mouth and speaking, right? But when go back to maybe my first touch with leadership, it was probably in high school when I was this shy, kind of introverted kid. But for some reason, because maybe I had worked so hard on my skills, the coaches always put me, say, first in line for a drill, or you could tell that they were using me as or saying I'm one of the better players. Well, the fact of the matter was I couldn't probably lead by voice back then. So my first memory of being in a leadership position was in high school when I was on the basketball team. And I think I led, although I didn't know it at the time, I led by example. As leaders, we put demands on our people, we put quotas on our people, we put goals on our people. But if you don't live the example of trying to fulfill the goals you have as a leader yourself, in your particular job and role in the company, then why should they? So as I often say about example in terms of leadership, be who you want them to be. If you want them to be learners, let them see that you're a learner. If you want them to maybe take notes and listen better, let them see you taking notes like we're doing today and listening better. If you want them to work hard, let them see that you work hard too. So I started to understand that even though I didn't say a lot, I still had to make sure that my actions matched my words. And that's huge in leadership, because the people we lead, the two biggest things they have to evaluate us as leaders is their eyes and their ears. What do they see relative to what did they hear? And do those two match up? Do your actions match your words? And then the other aspect of it, I think back then is, I guess I was leading, but I was always the one who made the calls that say, hey, let's work out today. Hey, let's meet at there was a court at the YMCA. Let's meet at the Y today at 4:00 and let's play full court. So I created a plan and a a strategy for us to become better without our coaches around, right? So I kind of got a little bit of that. And then I kind of just figured, when I was a leader back then, I either got in front of the group and tried to pull them with me, like, okay, you guys aren't going to work hard. I'm going to work hard. Now you can't keep up with me. And that's not always the best to do all the time. Sometimes I got behind them and tried to push them forward. Hey, you're better than this, okay? I saw it yesterday when we were playing. But then I didn't learn till later in life that there's a third form. And that's what we need more so today. And that's getting shoulder to shoulder, putting an arm around those you lead and walking with them. Gosh, we're seeing that on TV now. I just was reading an article about Nick Saban, and he's walking shoulder to shoulder with his football team. So are many other coaches doing the same thing around the country. So those are probably some of the things I probably learned. Maybe I didn't know it at the time, that I did as a young buck. And another thing, I should probably throw this out. This is more for maybe the athletes who might be listening. The easiest place to lead is on your field, your court, your pool, right? But there are so many leadership venues when you're a leader on a sports team. For instance, you have to lead in the locker room. That's where coaches need leadership. You have to lead in the hotels when the coaches may not see you. You have to lead at the parties around campus when the coaches aren't at those parties, right? And maybe pulling somebody out of a situation where they shouldn't, and they know that they shouldn't be in that situation. So make sure that you understand the venues of leadership, not just the one that's on the field or court.
So many good takeaways. And, everything you talked about relates back to consistency, right? And I think that is just so important as a leader. And I know for sure our student athletes listening, but I'm sure a lot of people, it's hard to lead all the time, right? Leadership isn't a turn it on or turn it off. It's the everyday habits and actions someone's doing. And I think your journey and your stories are just a reminder of how important it is to be consistent and the difference that is going to make. And then I loved the part you talked about getting shoulder to shoulder, because I think that is, that's what we need right now, to your point. And so that really takes me into kind of the last thing I really want to talk to you about is that shoulder to shoulder. Is life is hard right now. And we know that. It is a challenging time to be a leader. There is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of unrest. And, I personally am always the glass half full positivity. But it's challenging for leaders right now, even the most positive ones. And so what are some strategies you recommend for people really trying to lead in this time of adversity that they can start doing to impact themselves and then their teams around them more effectively?
This is a great question, one I've been asked quite a bit since the pandemic broke, and then even more so since we see the sensitivity of the racial injustice. So the first thing I would say is, in times of challenge and in times of stress and in times of uncertainty, leadership is about responsibility and accountability, not invisibility, right? You can't all of a sudden, because it gets tough, lock your office door and say, hey, I've taken you this far, you guys figure it out. No. This has to be figured out together. All challenges have to be figured out together. So that would be probably point number one. Number two would be, as leaders, I think we have to self-reflect. Spend a lot of time just with yourself and your thoughts. What truly are your values? Because they will be the lens through which you get through all difficult times. Right? What are your standards? Because they also will help support your values. At what level are you going to do this? At what commitment are you going to do this? And the third part is something that's really important. And I didn't realize it until actually these last few months. Know your people. So know your values, know your standards, know your people's stories, right? Because that brings me to what I call a leader's C game, the letter C, right? It's their C game. And what am I talking about? There are 8 C's that when we're leading through times of crisis and challenge that we just have to keep front of mind. I'm not going to say you have to do it, but I am going to ask that you actually say to yourself, I have to think about doing these things, right? So when it comes to your people, the first C is caring, showing empathy, right? We're hearing the word empathy a lot right now. It's a huge characteristic of the best leaders in sports and corporate world. And empathy to me is there's two pairs of shoes each day that you have to wear. The ones that are in your closet where they fit really well, you love the color, you love the style, you love the shoelaces. And now you go over to some of the people's closets of those that you lead. And you walk into their closets if they let you. And you ask, can I put your shoes on too? And you know what you find out? They're different. They're uncomfortable. They don't look the same, right? They're not the same size. Empathy is the ability to walk in someone else's shoes to see what they go through each and every day. So when it comes to your people, we're talking about caring. And then the second thing is connection. You know, right now we're doing a lot of communicating through Zoom. And if this continues to happen and occur, then we have to learn how to figure out, there's two C's in communication. There's the communication itself, which is this we're doing right now, but there's also the connection. And the connection is best found and best accomplished, right, through an empathetic route, okay? So what I mean by that is, can you get to the heart of the people you lead? There's two things we strive for in leadership, especially in today's world. One is getting a piece of their minds, right? Because we're leading them. How can we get them thinking about what we're trying to do to become the best we can become? And the best way to get to the mind is through the heart. That's the connection part, right? So know your people's stories, because once we tell each other our stories, all this other stuff that we read about in the books about vision and plans and that, it's the heart. The story comes from the heart, and you will find out some things about the people you lead that you never knew. So then it comes to your messaging itself. So in that, there's a couple of C's. Number one, the first is calm. As a leader, we have to be calm right now. We can't be in panic mode. Now, might the world be in panic mode? Possibly. But for us, they have to see a calm presence, knowing that you have some concern, but a calmness about you. Because in times of challenge, the leader truly does set the vibe, right? Whenever there's a vibe to be set, it's going to be set in times of challenge, in times of failure, in times of screw-ups, right? The second C is the communication we talked about, right? This concept, and I always say early and often in crisis. Communicate as early as you can and as often as you can, right? Because people out there, you know what they have on their foreheads in times of crisis? A big question mark, right? So communicate early and often. And remember, when you're in a time of crisis and you're trying to come up with a solution, communication isn't a competition. It's a discussion. You don't just try and win your point of view, because your point of view in times of challenging to get over the challenge may not be the best one. And as you can see, I keep this list as well with me as every single day. The next, so calm, communication, and clarity. Clarity as a leader. We need that more than ever right now. No ambiguity, okay? And sometimes it's a tough truth, right? It's a tough truth that you have to tell. But some clarity, and clarity is not so they understand. That's not clarity in these situations. Clarity is that you tell them in such a way that is impossible to misunderstand. That's what clarity is. And then we get to the part of actually leading, which are our last three C's. And the first one is courage. You know, as a leader, sometimes you do have to step out there. Take the NBA. Adam Silver came up with this bubble concept. You know, that took some courage, right? Who knows? It could have blown up in his face. Right? But you have to have courage as a leader, because you have to make some difficult decisions. You have to be out in front. Then the second C there is competence. Make sure you know what you're talking about before you open your mouth. Okay? So study what's going on. Talk to other people. Read about what some other leaders might be doing, but show competence when you're actually in front of your group. And then the last C is confidence. And the only way you can instill confidence in others is if they feel that you are confident about what you're talking about, what you're telling them. Do you really believe in it? Because before we can get buy-in from our people, we must first get believe-in from our people. They have to believe that you believe in what you're telling them. They have to believe that you are competent in what you're doing. Otherwise, we're not going to follow you. So that would be kind of maybe some of the things that I've spoken to some companies about leading through crisis.
Oh my gosh, I hope you all got your notepads out because there was so much good wisdom in that. I think, well, one, I think you made me cool with this whole set the vibe thing. That's going to be a new one I start to talk about. I love that. And I know our student athletes talk about the vibe of their teams and of their cultures a lot. So I'm definitely going to use that one. But the communication piece that you just talked about over and over in pretty much every C, that communication kept coming up. And, in the Zoom world, you're Zooming, you're texting, you're emailing, but you aren't getting that face-to-face communication. So this communication C is just so critical. And I think everyone's really challenged in that area of, over communicate, but what does that actually mean? And the words that I am going to put in big bold letters on my chart board is that make it impossible to misunderstand, because I think that is just key right now. Like, you have to communicate. If they're still asking questions, you didn't communicate it enough. And so
that's a great point. That
piece for me is just, that is my, I loved all the C's, but that impossible to misunderstand is, there's so much uncertainty and things are sometimes changing by the minute, right? And so how do you communicate so well and provide that clear message and direction that it's impossible to misunderstand? So I love that. And I think that's such a huge takeaway for everyone today. So I am so thankful to you, Kevin. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we send y'all up on your way?
Well, when this thing all broke, I was actually up in New Hampshire, in the mountains of New Hampshire, speaking to a training group that was training to become a part of the Special Forces. So when I left there, I drove back down to Boston, was ready to fly to Arkansas to speak to an insurance conference out there. And that's the night it broke. Wow. And so I talked to the people in Arkansas, and they said, look, we've got to cancel our conference. Are you okay with that? I said, I'm fine. So I flew home. So I was like everybody, maybe for those first 2 or 3 days, maybe the first 48 to 72 hours. What's going on? What's the truth? How long is it going to last? Then I started to think, this may last a while. So how can I make sure that I get that? I think there's a couple of things you can do. You can continue to work at becoming better, or you can wait until it breaks, right? And I think those who have played the waiting game have fallen behind. So I said, how can I wake up every single day and set my mind right? So I wrote down on, let me grab it here. It's on my desk, my desk right here. That's the good part of being in these Zooms. You get to see people like thousands. You're in my office now, whoever's listening. That one person who's listening, you're in my office. So the first card I could find was a green note card. You see it right here. It's a Celtics note card. And I wrote down 2 questions that could help me set my mind each and every day. Here are the 2 questions. Number 1, did I waste yesterday? Because if I wasted yesterday, that sets me up for today. Because I know from coaching, in the NBA with the Celtics and the Clippers, one of our goals is to never lose 2 in a row. Same thing applies to our days. Never waste 2 in a row. And I would say never go 2 months in a row with multiple wastes, right? One's enough for a month. But we are human. We're going to leak. We're going to leak discipline some days, leak focus, leak passion, leak confidence. We leak. That's what we are. That's what humans do. So did I waste yesterday? And the second question is, how would I feel if I waste today? And I think that everyone who is trying to become better, we all have the same answer. I wouldn't feel good, right? So that sets me up to really try hard to not waste today at all, to get something out of it. I know everyone's talking now about, well, this is the time to get better every day. This is the time to get 1% better. And I used to read that stuff. Like, how do I know if I did? So I don't do that anymore. What I do is every day I feed my mind. I want to feed my mind every single day. And you know what happens? Magically, I get better because I learned something I didn't know, or I was able to change the way I said something because of the way somebody said something in a book or in a YouTube, right? So I'm not as concerned now with all this, because I didn't know how to categorize it, this 1% better and better every day. No, feed your mind every day. through reading, watching YouTubes, listening to Zooms, podcasts, and I guarantee you'll get better.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that was such a good way to end us, y'all. I think hopefully, I know everybody listening did not waste their day by listening to this, because there's so many good and helpful hints out there. And Kevin, thank you so, so much for dropping all that wisdom and inspiration on us. I'm motivated to get back out there and get into this, and I know our audience is too. For all of you listening, our goal in our Richmond Spiders Lead program is to build champion leaders for life. So in sport, in the classroom, personally, and to go out there and change the world. And so we hope that y'all can take some great nuggets from Mr. Kevin Eastman today and go out and do that yourselves and build champion leaders in your own lives too. So Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for listening, everyone.